Namaskar. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Aishwarya Singh, and it is entirely my honor and my privilege to extend a very warm welcome to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, to this occasion that marks the launch of Nat Health. Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a very auspicious day for all of us at Nat Health. And we would like to really thank all of you for taking the time out of your very busy schedules in the middle of the week on a busy working day from all across India. Welcome to Delhi, ladies and gentlemen, one of the greenest capitals of the world and also the cultural capital of India. Ladies and gentlemen, we would also like to extend a special welcome to our guest of honor, Mr. C.K. Mishra, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Thank you very much, sir, for gracing this occasion with your presence. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, as many of you would know, Nat Health was founded with the vision to be the credible and unified voice in improving access and quality of healthcare. With that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now my privilege to invite on the dais our guest of honor, Mr. C.K. Mishra, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. May I request you, sir, to kindly grace us on the dais. Warm welcome, sir. And ladies and gentlemen, I would also like to take the privilege of inviting on stage our President, Dr. Pratap C. Reddy, Chairman, Apollo Hospitals, President, Nat Health. Warm welcome, sir. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would now request Dr. Pratap C. Reddy, Chairman, Apollo Hospitals and President, Nat Health, to please deliver the welcome address.
Good morning on a very good day. As I walked in, several members said, "Congrats, Dr. Reddy." It's not congrats to me. I know what they meant. Congrats, Dr. Reddy, for this vision that has come to a reality today. We just saw the audiovisual, but in all our minds we know that today we are fulfilling a concept which will drive the health of tomorrow. We realize fully well that there is an urgent need for us to come together, and that's what really happened. There are many wonderful things that have happened in the last few decades in health. It's not just our country people. There are a large number of people from several countries who now look at India and say, oh, here in India, we can get the same level of health care as any place in the world, but with a tremendous cost benefit and better care, commitment and compassion. So we have earned that pride. But we all know that out in India we face very severe challenges with some of the existing communicable diseases that are already not just come under control, but this new threat that is coming up. So there is a great stir in the entire healthcare field which sometimes startles and says, can we face it? By all of you being here together and with the Ministry of Health being with us, we assure ourselves saying, we will do it. We will take this challenge, we'll bring methodologies, we'll devise newer innovations to take on this. I also wanted to draw a very touching thing that's happening. You know, if the last several weeks, a few months, the rupee got rapidly depreciated. The burden it is imposed on each one of us is tremendous. But nobody really is talking about it. You know, neither the payers nor leave alone the patients. Even as hospitals, we are not talking about it because not that we are feeling shy. We don't know how to express. Suddenly we have got this burden. Where do I pass on this burden? This is where I think a body like this is going to give us a format saying, let's become all equal in delivering this tremendous thing that we have in providing utmost care for all our people. I know we have already made a game plan, how we achieve our goals. The way forward is all marked out. The number of people who worked with it, as I said, they've done a tremendous job, and we will proceed. As the day ends, the work is going to begin for all of us to see what can we do, how can we transform health so that our people stay healthy. And then by staying healthy, I know we will make a significant contribution for the economy of the country. All the best to all of you. From my heart, I say, it's a glorious thing that's happened today. But I think by all of us being together, it's going to be a future model for health, not just for ourselves. Your future model that will create for the rest of the whole world to manage. Because I know there is no place on the earth or no country on earth we can say that says, oh, our healthcare is excellent. So we believe that we'll not only be able to be the leaders of the healthcare for our country, we'll lead the health of the globe. God bless all of you. Thank you.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege and my honor to request our guest of honor, Mr. C.K. Mishra, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, with whom healthcare industry is very familiar, to deliver his address.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. It's always a pleasure to be a part of such a gathering where issues which are very close to your heart are being discussed. But this morning is not just a pleasure but a privilege for me, because I am present among the luminaries of this country who are not only driving the health sector but will perhaps write what is the destiny of the health sector of the country. And Nat Health has been launched today. You've announced your arrival. Believe me, there'll be thousands and thousands who will from now on watch your journey. The key word that was used in the audiovisual presentation this morning and what Dr. Reddy said was collaboration. To be very honest, this is something that we've been striving for a very long time but not fully achieved. And it's an effort that needs to be made with utmost sincerity. It's like a pledge that we need to take, because if the sector has to move, it has to move together. Dr. Reddy was mentioning the afternoon session got a little jumbled up because of the parliamentary committee and I had to come in the morning. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not about one individual, that's me, coming here to participate in a seminar. What I bring with me is a desire of a system to be a part of such deliberations, not merely to share the vision of the government, but also to learn from the experiences of those who are active. It is only a road we have to choose together. And with Nat Health today, I think we've inched a little ahead and hopefully we'll get to our goal. We are all assembled here in the backdrop of a huge mission that you and I and government, everybody carries. That is our dream of universal health coverage. We essentially are extremely disturbed and worried, or should I say, seized with the problem of disease burden that the country faces. Other worrying issue, according to me, which actually should really be looked at by you, is the allied health services. Very little attention is being paid to that as of now. That pool of resource that we need to actually put into our system has to come. We would certainly be very happy to have a discussion with anybody who has ideas on how we can dig into that pool, increase that pool, intensify our efforts in that direction, so that ultimately we do have what we really want to have. So together we need to move ahead in ensuring that the Indian population gets a healthcare system which is affordable to him, of an appropriate quality, and delivered to him in a manner where he sees access almost as his right. Unless we are able to create that kind of an environment, no amount of effort will help. Of course, we need to supplement with the technology, with research, again, which is a subject which is not found much attention in this country. We need to do all that. But we need to look at, with a very focused eye, at the basics of where we belong, where we want to move, and the path that we want to take. So let us collaborate. We promise you that our policies will be in consultation and not counting on anything else but the interest of the Indian population and the healthcare delivery system that we want to introduce in India. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you very much for your patience. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this point in time, I'm going to request our President, Dr. Reddy, to present our guest of honor, Mr. Mishra, with this small booklet that has been specially prepared for today's program proceedings, the launch and inauguration of Nat Health. Sir, may I request you to please do the honors? And ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together once again for Mr. Mishra for gracing this occasion with his presence. We will now have a roundtable session on a topic of great significance: improvement in healthcare access and quality in urban mass market. And ladies and gentlemen, at the onset of these roundtable deliberations, allow me to please invite Mr. Karan Singh, Partner Bain & Company, to please steer the conversation.
Great, let's get started. The topic for today is how to increase access and quality care in the urban mass market. What do we really mean by the urban mass market? We are really not talking about people in this room, even though they are the younger versions of what we're showing on the screen here. We're not talking about people in the bottom of the pyramid, the poor. We're talking about the mainstream or the belly of the Indian market, which is really what we are describing as the urban mass market. This is a definition we want to use of $1,500 to $10,000 in per capita income per year. This is really the focus of today's discussion this morning. The two questions we would like to address in this morning's discussion is really, what is the full potential of the urban mass market? And second is, what are the disruptive models and approaches we could take to unlock the potential of this market? Where we would like to structure the next hour and a half is, I will set the context by going through a few slides, and then we have a terrific panel here. We will go through and get comments from each of the panelists. And after the second question, we will take questions from the audience itself. There is a significant mega trend that India is going to face in the next decade. We will add 130 odd million people to the labor force, the most out of any nation in the world. This is if you look at the data on the left-hand side. But what is interesting, if you look at the data on the right-hand side, is this is going to be mostly focused in the lower income stratas, of the income stratas between $1,500 to $5,000 in per capita income. We need to think about how will the socio-economic profile of India change in this decade. And if you look at the population which is greater than 15 years, there is a very significant shift we're going to see by 2020. So let me try and wrap up on the first part by saying, what should the priorities really be when we think about the mass market? Should we be thinking of penetration, or is this about market creation at the same time? The focus, I know given the numbers we're talking about, needs to be in big volume. And how do we think about scalability here? And given the price points that we've talked about, what does it mean in terms of good enough offerings, or what does it mean in terms of the right acceptable quality? So let me just stop there, and let's start the first part of the discussion.
Indicated very rightly, there is this huge gap in the urban mass. There is a huge need. There are players, um, who've been in this business of health insurance for a few years now, and as you rightly said, have catered to two different ends, but left that middle segment still wide open. Now, one of the reasons is that that's still wide open, and I'll come to in terms of what disruptive changes could happen. One of the reasons is that it took a long time to hit the two other sides. One is in terms of the employed people through group schemes, and a lot of it was at the initiative of the corporates who understood the need to take care of their employees and then bought a group scheme and then covered the employees. On the other side, the government of India, through some either through the central government initiative or through the state government initiative, brought about some really good schemes. RSBY is one which we are pretty active on, has over a period of 3 to 4 years have covered hundreds of millions of people, right? But the one which you worry about, we worry about, and we're talking about are largely the self-employed group, which in my opinion fall in that middle basket. And they don't, majority of them do not have coverage. And the reason is that to them, in terms of the priority of purchases, health insurance to finance healthcare was never up there in that list. For some, it might have just about come into a list, which is a long list. But what I see today is, in that segment, fortunately or unfortunately, I think we could use it both ways, is that some of their high-end necessities in their table of 1 to 10 is things like a smartphone. That's something which, that segment which you're talking about would be prepared to take their purse. Are they prepared to take their purse and look at something to finance healthcare? Not yet. But I think we could ride on some of the successes to reach there, and that's the positive thing in my opinion. But just to sort of focus in terms of what could be some disruptive changes which we could make in industry, we continuously give this a lot of thought, and I can think of 3 examples, work in progress from our end, but forums like this, Nat Health, etc. is of great help. And then we heard the government representative saying they're prepared to listen for sure, and maybe, who knows, we could work on some of these changes. I'd like to break the population within the segment you spoke about into 3. Senior citizens who have the need, and I think they are the one bit of people who definitely want to buy. Pricing would be slightly higher for them because of their risk. Then there is this middle population which is above a student, but not yet in the senior citizens category. And then you have the young students, the young children. So my suggestion and my way of looking at it, if we could work together, is to see, if there are industry and policy changes which we could make to cater to this, to make it more attractive, to make them much more conscious about the need. If I were to take the bottom of this population, the young children, one of the suggestions which we have, which we're working on, is to see, if we could work with the ministry, education ministry, to see if there's some sort of a mandate can be there to ensure the health of all children in all educational institutions, funded partly by the parents, partly by the institution, and partly as a subsidy by the government for a period of time. So you catch them young, you get them into the a learning of what health insurance is, and you get people to use it, word spreads around. So it's that young population which is completely ignored today. Today there is a very small section of parents who actually insure children. They may not insure themselves, but if they do insure themselves, it takes a little while before they insure children. Then there's the second level of population, which I said, above the education level till you senior citizen, and that's a big chunk. And to them, they really look for as any money which they put in a financial instrument, what's my return? We haven't yet got a product called Savings Linked Health Insurance Program. Okay, there are several good examples in the United States, as close as Singapore. There are some good examples where we could work with the savings. So you tell them you save at that age when your health is good, You can dip into this for your out-of-pocket as well as for your hospitalization or your premium payment as you get older and your money, and you get off your salary list. So that's another one. We haven't cracked it as yet. There are still a way to go. Again, we have to work with the regulator as well as we have to work very closely here with the government, because unless you have good tax breaks for a savings linked scheme, it wouldn't work. And the third part is the senior citizens. Yes, they are buyers today for sure, because they see the risk, they face the risk, they see it around in their amongst their friends and relatives. To them, I think the tax benefits which are currently given probably is something which needs to be re-looked at. To me, today it is a 33% saving if you're in the 33% saving, but my suggestion is, why not knock it entirely against tax payable? So if you're paying 25,000 rupees as tax, you don't save 1/3 of that, but you save entirely the tax. So some examples of possible changes which we need to make as industry, as well as work with the regulator in this thing, is what I would say as a start to this discussion.
Anthony, excellent suggestions. I think especially segmenting the three groups and thinking about the children as a must, and then your ideas on health savings accounts and then tax breaks. So that's terrific suggestions. Aditya, do you have you go next? Give us your thoughts.
Yes, I mean, let me break the issue into two. One is the demand that we spoke about, and it's all about creating awareness. You spoke about penetration. I think it's a matter of penetration. You have to create the awareness of the disease. We've seen your numbers, they are significant. The other side is the supply side. What are we faced with today? If you look at some of the larger players, they're focused on large cities, tertiary, quaternary care. We, for example, at Fortis, have been focused on tertiary, quaternary for more than a decade, but have now a focused group working on what we call the low-cost delivery model, which we are piloting at a couple of sites. The other end you have is overstressed public healthcare infrastructure. I think we've seen some successes in smaller cities where PPPs have worked successfully. On the other hand, if you look at penetration of PPPs at 1%, it just tells you there's a lot more work to be done in this arena. And I think we need much better utilization of existing infrastructure that the government today owns and perhaps is overstressed to be able to utilize it in the best possible manner. At the end of the day, insurance will drive much more demand into our centers, but we will have to figure out collectively, whether it's the pharmaceutical manufacturers, the implant manufacturers, the technology providers, along with obviously the healthcare delivery providers, a model that works at a fraction of what we are serving the population today. Despite the fact that we are a fraction of the cost of the West, there's a lot more work to be done to address this segment of the market.
Aditya, if I can just ask you, the providers have so many growth opportunities. So this segment, where would this rank in your priority list?
Clearly, I think given that, if we look at our network and we've already started thinking about 25% of our capacity looking at low-cost delivery models in smaller cities, penetration in tier 2 to tier 3 towns, working with the government to utilize their infrastructure much better, having the talent. I think we must recognize that we all face collective constraints on trained manpower, whether it's paramedics, whether it's the medical talent itself, and so on and so forth. I think, or for that matter, nursing. But we have a lot of work to do to still further refine the healthcare delivery model at a cost point that's affordable to these people. But when I spoke about the demand side, we must not forget that we have a lot of work to do also in creating that awareness that people are saying. Half the time these people, when we talk about all these numbers, these are diagnosed numbers. You don't know what's out there in terms of people who can't afford it, don't even get diagnosed for a problem.
Sure. Great. Sushoban, there's been a lot of talk about the medical equipment, the technology providers. So what is your perspective on this opportunity?
Yeah, I'll try and address the question which you was a bit provocative to Aditya, but anyway, so I'll take it from a medical technology standpoint. I would say the intent is there. If you ask me today, is this our highest priority as a customer segment? Honestly speaking, no. The reason being is we do not have the capability to serve this segment, whether it be technology at an affordable scale, whether there is an internal need that satisfies that aspect, that is not there. But the intent is there. The good thing about this is that every company, every people in the industry, be it a multinational, be it a national company, are looking towards it because it's important. To your first question, that is it important? It's extremely important because some of the numbers that you showed is itself humongous.
Remember that these are catered by the private healthcare system, the smaller healthcare system, smaller medium-sized medical establishment. Up to 60% of the urban poor or the urban middle class, they are having out-of-pocket expenses and they are accessing the medium-sized nursing home care. So if you take the mathematics as you said, we have to address the most important sector to be addressed is this sector which is having out-of-pocket expenses. And this can be addressed only if the policies are adhered or they are catered towards the penetration into these urban middle class or the urban poor. Whereas the rural market or the rural mass has been catered to with a tier system of healthcare. In urban cities, we are lacking in the planning of healthcare. Whether there are tertiary healthcare systems available, at the same time the accessibility towards these healthcare systems are lacking. If you look at the traffic systems, whether in any metro of India today, the first primary or secondary care has to be taken care at the medium-sized nursing homes. So that planning of coexistence of the tertiary and the primary and middle care is very, very lacking today. And I think that would go a long road if we really cater towards that.
Now, we talked about awareness. Are there any plans of you collaborating with the larger hospital?
Yes, of course. We would like to. In fact, to be honest, our association caters to the awareness of the healthcare delivery system in terms of an individual doctor, his nursing practice, and the healthcare policies.
Okay.
We have a system where we are educating our doctors not only in terms of the nursing homes, but also in terms of patient safety culture. That today the term which is coined as patient safety, we have been doing in the form of do's and don'ts and medical legal alerts right since 40 years.
That's great. That's great. Wonderful.
Coming from the diagnostics industry, I would like to emphasize on something which has already been spoken about, but not enough has been actually done on the ground, which is the control of the so-called, lifestyle diseases or non-communicable diseases. So out here, the figures are really humongous. I don't think I need to bore people here, but we are going to have the highest burden of these diseases we already have, but by 2020, I think India would be having the maximum number of casualties from these diseases like diabetes, high blood pressure, coronary vascular disease, excuse me, cancers and so on. And the government of India's policies so far are only relegated or to a glucometer, and that too has not been a success. A basic test like sugar, cholesterol and hemoglobin. Now, hemoglobin has not been so-called introduced or been classified as anemia is not a non-communicable disease, but it is India's problem, but because 50% of our women folk in India are suffering from anemia. So practically speaking, we can, I think in places like Delhi, Bombay, etc., possible to screen, say, 1/4 of the population, which would be more than, say, 25 or 35 years old. For these basic tests like hemoglobin, cholesterol and blood sugar, and I'm not talking about the glucometer variety from, a syringe needle kind of a thing, and all the labs are accredited now, at least in bigger towns, so quality is not an issue. The only question is about affordability, but then I think we'll wait for the next questions to come up there.
Let me take the points which are there in front of you. The issue in terms of how do we address the mass market, and I think the presentation that was made by Karan very clearly showed 40 crores, clearly showed the issues that we are facing with respect to addressing mass market is in terms of awareness, in terms of affordability, in terms of availability. So the question then is, and also he mentioned that, and he showed that this mass market is covered by way of insurance, and I think which Dr. Sujata also mentioned, to an insignificant extent. It could be around 5 to 7%. Typically this would be cash, it would be ESI, it could be some CGHS and things like that. So the question then is, how do we address it? And I come back to what was said by Dr. Reddy and by Mr. Mishra, the need to collaborate here by the public sector, by the government, the public sector, the private sector, which is really the second question in front of you. And let me try and give my thoughts on that. I think when you talk in terms of collaboration, you can clearly segregate the focus that needs to be brought in to address this mass market. Let's take the government, for instance. The government is very, very successfully, even though we don't talk about it, neither does the government really talk about it, but they should. The very wonderful success of covering the BPL segment. 5 years ago, it was negligible. Today, we are talking in terms of almost 15 to 17% of the BPL population through RSBY, through Arogyasri and various other schemes being covered. And we are now talking in terms of a situation where 5 years ago, the total coverage, right from cash to corporate to various kinds of insurance, was a mere 12 to 15%. Today we are talking in terms of somewhere between 25 to 30% in a matter of 4 to 5 years. The government has very successfully done that. And therefore, if we are then talking in terms of what the government has been really good at, and why can't we extend that to the other segments of the population, I think the government is very capable of doing it, moving very quickly towards providing universal coverage. And therefore, if they now move from the BPL segment to the mass market segment, I think they are fairly well, they are capable in terms of addressing that. So what I therefore say is that when we talk in terms of division of labor, the government should really look at being the payer, look at focusing, rather than provision of healthcare, look at focusing on providing the coverage that is required across the entire population. Of course, along with that, you would need to have the enabling aspects of the government in terms of enabling quality, enabling regulations, and enabling that there is access being made available. So that's the first part. The private sector really needs to focus on availability and access. And I think you've seen very successful models of this in Brazil, you've seen this in South Korea, you've seen this in Thailand, where over a period of time, these roles have been very clearly defined, where the private sector has provided the provision and the government sector has really provided the coverage. And of course, I can go on that, but the third point which I want to talk about is the issue of awareness. And I think more than the private sector or the government sector looking at awareness, it should be the insurance which should do it, because insurance has a stake in it. The more awareness there is, the better it is for insurance, because it then covers issues of preventive care and all that goes along with it to make it the whole cost of care far more affordable to the insurance companies. So ultimately, when we talk in terms of this segregation, we then talk of affordability. And here again, even though the government talks in terms of affordability by the private sector, the focus by the private sector to move towards affordability, it is the government who can actually facilitate it. And you've seen that with all the RSBY Arogyasri schemes, the government has actually stipulated what can be reimbursed. So they have driven the pricing to a level which has to be accepted by the private sector. So if affordability is something that we are all talking about, we should look at the government with its universal coverage ultimately driving affordability. So if we then, to sum up, if we then look at this sort of division of services and division of labor, where universal coverage, affordability is driven by the government, provision, availability, access is done by the private sector, and awareness is done by the insurance. I think addressing the mass market would be far easier.
So I wanted to thank all the panelists for being here and contributing so vigorously to a very active debate. So thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to please invite Mr. Ghosh, Bain and Company to please steer the conversation.
So in terms of the session, what I'd like to do is very quickly set up the session, set up some of the key questions that we want our panelists to really give their views on. And the idea of this session was really to make sure that we push the boundaries in terms of what has been done so far and really tackle the tough and the difficult questions head on. So with that setup, I would want to get into the discussion with the panelists, and I'd ask Dr. Shabnam Singh to get us started on skill sets first, and we'll explore all of these 6 areas.
I'd like to ask everybody in this room, where do you really see development happen? Development starts with communities. Development starts with communities. And what is our healthcare community? Our healthcare community principally is 2 sets of people. One is the patient, and the second is the person who delivers the care. The people who we extol on one side, on the other side say we don't have enough numbers. When is it the last time that we really sat down with them and asked them, what is it that you want from us? Or what is it that you want so that you may go up the value chain of development? This, ladies and gentlemen, to me is the crux of the issue at hand. The ratio today, according to WHO in India, stands of 20 healthcare professionals for every 1,000 people. The standard is 25.4 to 1,000. Out of the 20 per 1,000, 11.9 have some kind of formal degree. The rest of them don't. Compounded with one of the slides shown earlier, the urban-rural skew, in that Bombay sits beautifully poised as far as the number of doctor-patient ratios is concerned, while Bihar sits abysmally low as far as that is concerned. So are we going to sit and just stand by and say that innovation only should be seen in areas of technology? Innovation should only be seen in the way we deliver care. We look at it as innovation will start with the people who provide the care. The answers, ladies and gentlemen, lie right in your esteemed hands today. When you look at the delivery of model, typically we have a hierarchical structure where we have a doctor right on top and we have the nurse, and there's a sea of people whom we really don't know. We can't survive without that sea of people. Have we ever looked at seeing how we are going to engage with them? How we can utilize them best so that we can relieve the doctor and nurse to be able to do what they are supposed to do? So ladies and gentlemen, the disruption and the innovation lies in your hands as to how you're going to approach this skill sets of people. We have to look in a disruptive, innovative manner. Look beyond doctors and nurses actively for task shifting. Only then can you reach tier 2 and tier 3. We need to look at disruptive models of training people into skill sets and ask them at the level of the village, do you need a cardiac specialist there? Or do you need a better trained ASHA worker there? Does tier 3 need, as mentioned very ably by the association representative from Mumbai, when predominantly people are dying of infections and dehydration, what is the level of the person who's going to provide that care? Grab that opportunity, give them that employment in tier 2, tier 3, and bring them up the value chain. That is my answer to your question, to the conundrum which is called the paucity of manpower?
Thank you, Dr. Shabnam, for that extremely provocative session, and really asking all of us, challenging all of us to rethink the paradigm of how we think about talent. Moving on, Anuj, we'd like to ask you to come over and really talk about insurance and why we see this as still a dilemma.
Thank you, NatHealth, for this opportunity to be here today to participate in this debate. The big numbers again for the country. As a country, we give or take a few percentage points. We spend about 5 or 6% of our GDP on healthcare. Most of this spend continues to be out of pocket, right? Health insurance, 2003, we were about 1,000 crore business. This year, we are about an 18,000 crore odd business. So we've been growing, but at the same time, as mentioned earlier, healthcare itself is growing so rapidly that I think that gap continues to, the underpenetration continues to remain. The second big one, of course, remains in every which way, health insurance so far has looked at funding only inpatient hospitalization. So we haven't still looked at financing OPD, diagnostics, pharmacy, and so on and so forth, the other healthcare related expenses that individuals are anyway incurring in this country. What will be key is our ability to localize the product and work very, very closely with providers in being able to design products. So if we need to reduce health insurance premium, our ability to tie up localized networks in those local geographies where we are able to provide higher volumes, and basis the higher volumes, providers have an incentive to come out and be able to start reduce cost and so on. NatHealth is a great initiative because a lot of times to have that conversation between the provider and the insurance company together to be able to design a program which could mutually benefit is something that we've not seen so far in this country. And I think we need to have that dialogue a lot more.
Next, we'll have the discussion on regulations, and may I request Dr. Jairam if you could come over, please.
Well, the question posed is regulation a double-edged sword? And my answer is a clear yes, it is a double-edged sword. The moment someone regulates, the feeling on the part of the person regulated is that this is an invasion on their right, and that cannot be changed. But the point really is, do we need regulation? And the answer is yes, very clearly yes. Before I go into it, I'd like to make a fundamental statement, and that is for us to understand that regulation and accreditation are not necessarily the same word. Regulation is a mandated licensing that the powers of the land require a person who provides health to acquire. Accreditation is not mandated, and it is voluntary on the part of the organization as we speak. Patients would certainly benefit with appropriate regulation. Investors would value it because they know the market that they enter, and therefore this is certainly a plus point. But the manner in which this regulation is introduced is the crux of the matter. A regulatory framework, which is a self-regulatory framework, and here I will draw a parallel very shortly, is indeed a different kettle of fish. The reason is that when you self-regulate, you not only understand the problems of the industry, but you create an environment and a certain peer pressure that will enable the private player to become better with time. This is certainly the correct manner in which a regulatory framework for health in this country must exist and should exist. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I would say we need to regulate. Regulation is a double-edged sword. Regulation in our country should accomplish one important aspect, and that is that it should be a self-regulated body with emphasis on clinical quality delivery and setting standards for evidence-based practices. There needs to be accountability through this regulatory process and a transparency of the work carried out in the various organizations that provide health. And lastly, that it should be the endeavor of the government to homogenize between the state and the center, because that indeed will be an important step forward. Thank you.
I'd now like to ask Probal if you could come here to the podium and really take us through about the commercial model and how we think about viability and feasibility.
I think good afternoon to all of you. And I think before I share some of my thoughts, I think on behalf of my industry players who are sitting out there at the corner, I think it's a matter of pride to be part of NatHealth. I think it gives us an opportunity to really start working towards bridging the huge gap, which I think in the morning somebody tried to size it up to $6 trillion. And I think it's a huge opportunity, it's a huge task, and I think we are absolutely game for it. I'd like to comment on three aspects. The first question that I would like to place in front of the audience is that whether segmentation, which is now an accepted strategy across industry, and not only unique to healthcare, but across all industries perhaps, does it lead to compromising quality? And my answer to that particular question is, need not be. But there are certain pitfalls which are associated with it, and how industry is really dealing with it. I would like to echo in some ways what Sushovan was talking about in the morning, that the intent is there, we are trying to move in that direction, but perhaps we are still not there. However, if you look at it, the kind of effort the industry is putting in, we are likely to see coexistence of old and new technologies together, which again is not unique to a healthcare industry, but you will see an Ambassador and a Lamborghini practically moving next to each other. And a similar kind of a concept we have started seeing happening in the healthcare industry. The challenge happens, or the challenge can happen, when the old technology and the new technology is clubbed together and lumped together, and similar kind of pricing is attached to the entire category of products. If that happens, that can lead to a huge problem, a huge challenge. And the biggest challenge obviously is going to stifle innovation. It is going to disincentivize the industry big time. Industry is going to cut down on medical education, is going to cut down on awareness, which is so critical to medical devices. And at the end of the day, the worst possible thing that can happen, this will allow low quality products and spurious medical devices entering the system. And this is a reality, and this we face day in and day out, and several companies are dealing with it. And this is one of the biggest challenges, which in many ways will compromise the quality. Why do we find it so difficult, especially when we move to tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 kind of cities and towns, to adhere to contracts? The payment schedule is 90 days. Sometimes it is more than a year, sometimes it is never paid. It becomes a bad debt. Why does it happen? The biggest challenge we see, and I think Anjan was mentioning about it in the curtain raiser, that there's a huge trust deficit, and it is not always restricted to between government and private. It is across the entire value chain, the healthcare value chain. There's tremendous amount of lack of confidence and trust which currently exists. The last point which I would like to touch upon, I think, is the entire ecosystem. Sometimes we refer to the ecosystem as the medical infrastructure going into tier 3, tier 4 towns. But I don't think we can really look at the medical infrastructure in isolation from the general infrastructure or the general ecosystem. A very simple example, if you want to attract talent, and here I mean medical professionals, into tier 3, tier 4 towns, we have to provide good schools and colleges for the children. If you are not able to provide that, if you are not able to provide electricity, if you are not able to provide distribution network for the suppliers, at the end of the day, this entire thing is not going to work out, and again there will be an impact on the quality of care or healthcare that we are going to provide in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities. In conclusion, I think on this NatHealth platform, all of us, we should work together towards a national unified policy and work together as one team towards covering the huge $6 trillion burden that we have on our shoulders. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for our esteemed dignitaries gracing this occasion.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We had a splendid morning. Many years back, when as a young engineer from IIT, I joined the healthcare sector through the medical technology route, little did I imagine that it was to be my destiny to witness nothing short of a fascinating journey, a revolution, a metamorphosis of the most extraordinary kind in the decades to come. I feel very blessed that I got the opportunity to be part of this ever-flowing river, from an almost predominant government-supported healthcare delivery system to a system where privatization has been at such a rapid pace that nearly 80% of the 5% of the GDP spent on healthcare today comes from the private side of healthcare. Innovations in technology was mind-boggling. The journey from the days of simple X-ray machines in the 70s to the best-in-class cutting-edge frontier technologies like 3 Tesla MRIs and PET CTs, making possible an extraordinary level of insights into the human body. Super precise linear accelerators for cancer therapy, to the wondrous efficacies of ever-improving drug-eluting stents. Healthcare has seen it all in these 3 or 4 decades of fascinating journey. As private sector march forward, government has been doing its bit very, very bravely and with wisdom. Being the health minister of India, or for that matter, health minister of any states, must be one of the most tough and challenging jobs in the world, simply because of the very wide bandwidth of the issues, the challenges, the problems to tackle. From the growing menace of NCDs to changing lifestyle-related diseases, which is sometimes beyond NCDs, to the daunting needs of sudden diseases post a disaster like in Uttarakhand, to all kinds of challenges that keep coming in healthcare. I think, we have had chicken flu, we have had scary impacts of the hard-hitting dengue. I think government has a very, very full plate, and we should appreciate what they're doing. Today, Indian healthcare has the best of T's. Talent, technology, both T's are there. Yet, there is a third T that in this challenging industry or sector is perhaps most important, the T for teamwork. And I will say only this, that the genesis of Nat Health was because we felt that there was scope of improvement in the teamwork across the industry, in trust, another T across the industry. So all I will say, to keep it simple, is the genesis of Nat Health a year back was some of us got together and felt there was scope of improvement of trust across sectors, across segments. There was scope of improvement of teamwork across the industry. And that's how we got together. We said we'll keep our feet on the ground, we'll work together, we'll bring various stakeholders together around one round table rather than locking horns across the table. That itself is a good start. I feel today, 1 year down the line, we have got halfway, but a lot of unfinished work. And so I'll conclude by quoting my favorite English poet, "The woods are dark, lovely and deep, but we have miles to go before we sleep." Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we now request our honorable guests of honor seated on the dais to begin the ceremonies of Nat Health launch and inauguration. We would first request our guests of honor, Dr. Syeda Hamid and Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, to begin the ceremonies by lighting the inaugural lamp. I would also request our President, Dr. Pratap C. Reddy, Mr. Shivinder Mohan Singh, Vice President, Nat Health, Mr. Anjan Bose, Secretary General, Nat Health, and Mr. Karan Singh to join us for the lighting of the lamp. And at this point in time, I would also take the privilege of inviting for the lamp lighting ceremony Mr. Dilip Chinoy, CEO and MD, National Skill Development Corporation, Mr. Rahul Khosla, Group MD, Max, and Mr. Parijat Ghosh, Partner, Bain and Company. The first step in the launch and inauguration of Nat Health, ladies and gentlemen, the Healthcare Federation of India. In the Indian culture, the lighting of the lamp has great significance to all auspicious occasions. Deepam, ladies and gentlemen, signifies knowledge. All our actions should be governed by the light of knowledge, especially the knowledge of Dharma. the lamp which is kept lit for all auspicious occasions, is a witness for all our thoughts and actions. We now pray and salute to the Supreme, who is present as the guiding light in the lamp and brings about auspiciousness and prosperity. It is said that the lighting of one oil lamp enables the lighting of countless number of lamps, just as one knowledgeable person enlightens others with his knowledge. Thank you very much, esteemed dignitaries. And ladies and gentlemen, we now have the good fortune of releasing the NatHealth PricewaterhouseCoopers white paper on enabling access to long-term healthcare funding in India. This meaningful concept paper is a joint initiative of NatHealth and PricewaterhouseCoopers. I'm now going to request the dignitaries on the dais to release this white paper, as I would also like to request Ms. Bharti Gupta Ramola, Market and Industry Leader at PricewaterhouseCoopers, to join us for the unveiling of NatHealth PwC white paper. Please welcome her with a big hand. This is a brilliant photo opportunity for all of us. The launch of NatHealth. Ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, I now have the privilege of requesting our guest of honor, Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, Director General, Confederation of Indian Industry, the head of one of the best industry institutions in the world, to now deliver his address. Please welcome him again with another round of applause.
Thank you. It's indeed a great pleasure to be here with the leaders of the healthcare fraternity, and a very warm good afternoon to each one of you. I should begin by congratulating the NatHealth for this launch. It's really an outstanding occasion, and on behalf of CII and my personal behalf, warm congratulations for this, and really look forward to a very long innings with you. As one can see, the leadership of the NatHealth is already into very great hands, and with the leadership that one sees from Dr. Pratap Reddy, a visionary, a father figure, and it's been a pleasure and honor working with him very closely over the last many years. Learned a lot from him, not only in the healthcare sector, but generally. And once his leadership, I'm sure, is an outstanding contribution to this formative year of NatHealth. Also see Shivinder Mohan Singh, if one can call him a dynamic young strategist, one whose contribution to making the Indian healthcare industry globally so well known is indeed outstanding. And so great leadership there in NatHealth, and I'm sure it would really rise to great heights in the years to come. I must go back in time, and in the 90s, when CII was primarily a manufacturing-based organization, manufacturing-led organization, we started also thinking of the services sector, and really started getting a large number of services sectors into the CII fold. And as an Apex organization, then we really thought that it was important that healthcare would be a very, very important sector for the country. And we started focusing on the healthcare sector, started work on our healthcare sector from that time onwards. And it was in the early 2000s that we formed a committee of healthcare to begin with in CII. And that time we were fortunate to have the leadership that we see here in this hall, some of them really involved in shaping up the healthcare work as an industry association towards a policy framing for the country, and involving the then healthcare leaders in the country. In spite of the tremendous progress made over the last decade, because of the sheer magnitude of the challenge, India has to catch up a lot on the healthcare outcomes. Indicators related to life expectancy, maternal and child health, etc., while having improved faster in the past decade than in the one before, continue to fall behind in the LMIC average. The situation is further complicated by the inequity in the healthcare access across the states and segments within the population. The non-communicable diseases burden has grown to 53% of the total disease burden by 2008, according to the WHO. So some of the key challenges that continue to plague us are well known, such as the demand-supply gap in the healthcare infrastructure and medical talent, the acute regional imbalance in the two areas, continuing risk to underprivileged population, of rising out-of-pocket healthcare costs, continuance of incidence of communicable diseases, and the rising non-communicable diseases. This has really envisioned establishing a system of universal health coverage. Affordable healthcare underpins this vision and is aligned to the learnings and experiences of nations that have moved a long distance in their health reforms journey. The role of collaborations in this journey cannot be underemphasized. If India has to achieve universal healthcare for all, it has to ensure that 4 pillars of healthcare, namely the healthcare providers, the hospitals, the medical technology industry, the healthcare insurance sector, and the pharma sector work together in collaborative fashion. Also important today is the need for strong involvement of business and industry in the areas of public health. Needless to mention that in the entire process, we look forward to the stewardship role of the government in creating the vision for the country's healthcare system and orchestrating and facilitating at a system level the implementation of the developmental initiatives. The 12th plan has indicated the need for strong private-public partnership for enabling effective collaborations. This is one area where there is, we believe, tremendous scope for the private sector to complement the government's effort in reaching out our healthcare goals. This will necessarily require a few interventions like creation of a legal framework, carefully choosing and testing PPP models by understanding the key value drivers and risks, actively building a market and supplier base for public-private contracts, and finally implementing strict controlling and performance monitoring. We are all aware that the healthcare is a unique social sector with remarkably different demands, including a dire need for synergization of efforts by all stakeholders. Against this, I really see a very good possibility of aligning strategies of both organizations, NatHealth and CII, in driving this critical agenda for making a significant difference in the healthcare scenario in India. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, once again, warm congratulations, and really look forward to working with you very closely. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are grateful to our guest of honor, Dr. Sayeeda Hameed, Member Planning Commission, for her presence. With her vast experience and deep insights, she plays a major role in the healthcare segment in Planning Commission, one of the apex institutions in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my privilege to request her to please deliver the guest of honor's address.
Today I'm addressing people like Dr. Pratap Reddy and many distinguished captains of this sector. I can say that we in the Planning Commission have given a plan, which is the people's plan. We don't like to think that it's a plan that has been made by a few bunch of us Planning Commission members and senior bureaucrats and middle-ranking bureaucrats within the halls of the Yojana Bhavan. We want to say that we have gone out and spoken to tribals in the Tilda district of Chhattisgarh, where all the tribals from across that particular region had come and given us their input in health, which is a sector I look after, in women and children, which is another sector I look after, in nutrition, which is also my sector. And you see, they're all very much related. The synergy between these sectors, and they came and they gave us their input. So what they have said is in fact the will of the people. It's we the people who have given ourselves a plan. Now this plan can either be buried in the vault in Yojana Bhavan or in any of the ministries, or it can be taken out. And I can say that in some of my sectors, and I want to share this with you, I look after another very marginalized sector, which is the handlooms and handicraft sector. And I look after another marginalized sector, which is the minority sector. People have said that just give us the plan. We have an excellent plan, give it to us. But unless you understand and you imbibe and you decide to play out what is in the plan, it will simply remain buried, and all the things that everybody has signed on to on the 28th of December 2012, the entire country signed on this plan. So everybody is committed to it. And as you know, that whereas the government of India is committed to public-private partnership, people have, some of the previous speakers have referred to it, with regulation, with responsibility, with accountability,
with grievance redressal systems so that nobody is denied treatment in the big and the multi-specialty hospitals within the range of responsibility and commitment. With that, government has encouraged. Government has actually encouraged viability gap funding, encouraged making of formal agreements so that the previous experience of involving the private sector, the mistakes that were made in the past are not repeated. So all of that, the doors are wide open, the need is dire, and what you understand very well and we don't always understand is the need for convergence within ministries, the need for people to come together. You have done that in creating Nat Health. We need to do it within government. We need to understand that between health, women and children, nutrition, and many of these sectors, whether it's rural development, agriculture, Panchayati Raj, because devolution is a very important aspect, there is need for convergence, for working together. Non-conventional energy resources, it has a very important part. So my friends, I think that hope is what we have in this immensely important initiative that you have taken the time, the effort and the resources and the stakeholders who have put in so much to keep the dynamism together, producing a document and launching it today. I would say a constantly slow and not to be discouraged, but to keep it going, because what this country needs is hope for the common woman, hope for the common man and the common child to be able to reach the monitorable goals which have been articulated and put down for us as the very important part of people's health in our 12th plan. Thank you.
And now I would request Mr. Shivinder Mohan Singh to conclude the inaugural session and also propose the word of thanks.
To the esteemed guests on our panel, Dr. Saida Ahmed, what a fantastic summary, and couldn't have asked for better to have the Nat Health inauguration with that kind of a very overarching summary of the healthcare needs and status in our country today. Mr. Banerjee, not only giving us support before we were born, but while we were being born, as we get born, and hopefully for many, many more birthdays to come. Thank you very much. Mr. Mishra, who was here with us earlier today, unfortunately couldn't be here as we talked about earlier. To all the members here on the dais and off the dais, from the Governing Council, all the members of Nat Health, newly formed Nat Health, and hopefully many, many more that are here and outside of here that are going to be here. So firstly, thank you, and thank you to all the Nat Health members for being here today to make this occasion truly worth a starting of a great future. All of you, the Governing Council, the founder members, have contributed their time, participation, mind share, given their vote of confidence by supporting this launch event and actually believing in the vision of the fact that there is a right time and a right place for something that India so desperately needs. There are not too many days in a year, or I would say not too many occasions in an industry's lifespan that become milestones. Some have become millstones over the years, but some that become milestones. And I believe, fundamentally believe, in the context of Indian healthcare industry, today will be such one milestone that will change the future of the nation's healthcare going forward, not just for the people who are part of it, but for every citizen of this country. I believe the one before this was probably in the late 80s when Dr. Reddy did what has now become healthcare today. Today is the first closing, I would say, of a lot of work behind the scenes over the last 3 years of putting Nat Health together, figuring out why, what, when, where, and who do we want to put together. Hopefully the beginning of a common platform for all stakeholders of the healthcare industry, in being a knowledge partner, in building appropriate and correct policy for the nation for the next few decades, not looking at it from a short term or a reaction to whatever may be happening in the market. And last but not the least, all of it must benefit patient safety and quality and overall prevention before cure. I think that's really what I take away as the mandate of the NatHealth from the deliberation that we've had today and the conversation that we've had with many of us over the last couple of years. I do have one more topic, pretty much the last, I would guess, for this day, and perhaps, at least I would like to believe so, the most important for the day, which is to thank everybody for getting us here and ensure the seeds of making sure that we get to the ultimate destination. And I'm going to start with Dr. Reddy. Sir, this would not have been possible without what all you've done. I think just the magnetism of Dr. Reddy to get an idea on the table, deliberated, discussed, and agreed, I think in itself is pretty much a contribution that we're not going to get from any, probably all of us put together. The GC members who have, I would have liked to have said fought, but unfortunately have not fought, but agreed, ferociously agreed on most of the topics that we need to do as NatHealth, and as many meetings we've talked about that we have finally had to end a conversation because we were all violently agreeing with ourselves on what we need to do. So to all of you who've made today possible and hopefully will be the lights taking us forward. To the NatHealth support team, to Anjan's arms and legs and sometimes hands and head, I would hope not too much of the head, but Vikas and Kalpana, who are sitting at the back, who made us get to this point pretty much on our feet without having collapsed so far. To PwC, who's partnered with us in a lot of thought process. With Bain, as Dr. Reddy also mentioned, who has given us tremendous IQ support and spine to be able to get us to think right, think straight, and put it in boxes. I think that has been a critical support to us because healthcare, as we all know, is a very vast subject and topic. A federation for healthcare in our country can be going all over the place, want to do all over the things. I think what they've given us really a framework, a guide map, and check milestones to get to where we want to go. And I think that has been and will become a very significant track to go forward. So thank you very much, Bain and Karan particularly. To our core team, or I would call it a core trio, of a very good combination of women power and the opposite of Shabnam, of Raji and Daljit. I don't think any Secretary General could have made it here, not taking away the credit from the Secretary General, but thank you very much to the three of you who've given a lot of back-end support and invisible support to this initiative. And a very little part of that thank you to Anjan, who's been the face of NatHealth with no work at all. So Anjan, thank you so much for everything.
That, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to thank our esteemed dignitaries once again for concluding the launch and inauguration of NatHealth. Thank you very much once again. The day is brought to an end. We'd like to thank once again our knowledge partners, Bain & Company, Concept Partners, PwC, PR and event managed by Impact PR, audio-visual presentation by Impact PR, and media partner HealthBiz India and eHealth magazine. Ladies and gentlemen, we would also like to thank our founding members and gold sponsors, Fortis, Apollo and Max, silver sponsors, Dr. Lal Path Labs and Johnson & Johnson Medical Companies. We'd also like to thank conference kit sponsors, Manipal Hospital, and of course, our partners, we would like to thank once again.
One more. Wait, one more please. Last. Wait, no, we're last. Ladies ki achhi aani chahiye.